Sometimes the sharpest parenting moment is not discipline at all, but accumulated distress. It sounds like a boundary, but it lands like panic inside the room. Your child hears the words, but your nervous system tells the deeper story. That is why two parents can say no and create completely different feelings. One no feels solid, calm, and safe enough to lean against for kids. The other no feels jagged, personal, and charged with something far bigger. Children do not only react to limits, they react to the emotional weather. And parents often mistake their own flooding for strength because it finally sounds firm. But force is not clarity, and urgency is not leadership at home. Real discipline gives a child structure without making them carry the parent's overwhelm. Distress does the opposite, and children feel that difference almost instantly inside. Brush your teeth now may be discipline, or it may be collapse wearing authority. One version says, I can hold this boundary and still hold you. The other says, I am barely holding myself and now you feel dangerous. Because discipline teaches limits, while distress teaches children how unstable pressure feels. A child can survive your no, but they struggle with your unprocessed fear. A teen can tolerate rules, yet still retreat from the tension surrounding them. That is why some screen fights explode long before the phone becomes the issue. The argument starts with notifications, but the fuel was already building all day. It was needing 5 quiet minutes, then feeling selfish for even wanting them. By the time your child asked for one more thing, your body said threat. Not because your child was dangerous, but because you were already overloaded. This is where many loving parents become harsher than they intended that day. They are not trying to dominate their children, they are trying to stop drowning. And children feel the drowning even when the words sound like correction. It does not need to be cold, loud, or intimidating to work. In fact, the calmer it is, the more clearly a child can learn. Distress feels powerful because it releases pressure from the parent in that moment. But what feels relieving to the parent often feels alarming to the child. That is the hidden trade many overwhelmed families keep making without noticing. Then guilt arrives later, usually after the house finally gets quiet again. You replay your tone, your face, the flinch, the slammed bedroom door. You know the limit was necessary, but something in the delivery felt wrong. It is the part of you noticing that the boundary got mixed with pain. And that matters, because children do not need pain to understand limits. They need repetition, predictability, connection, and adults who can stay present enough. That sounds simple until modern parenting adds work pangs to every vulnerable moment. You are answering a child while part of your mind is elsewhere. You are making dinner while tracking deadlines, forms, passwords, groceries, and moods. You are helping with homework while wondering if your teenager is quietly falling apart. Not cruelty, just a fried brain pretending it still has emotional range left. When the brain is overloaded, patience does not disappear all at once. It thins out first, like paper stretched too far over too much weight. Small requests begin to feel invasive, even when the child is innocent. That is when distress borrows the language of discipline and wears it badly. It says consequences but really means I cannot tolerate one more input. It says respect, but underneath it feels like desperation for emotional space. And children, especially teens, can sense that emotional mismatch almost immediately at home. They may not explain it well, but their body reacts before language does. The little child becomes louder, clingier, or suddenly impossible over one small request. The teen goes flat, dismissive, or disappears deeper into the phone screen. Parents often read those reactions as defiance, when they are sometimes alarm. That does not mean every reaction is healthy or every boundary should soften. It means you get better results when you understand the emotional engine. Because once distress drives the interaction, the lesson gets lost in survival. The child stops learning the rule and starts managing the atmosphere instead. That is exhausting for them and devastating for family trust over time. They became experts early at reading footsteps, sighs, drawer sounds, and silence. So when parenthood overloads them, they sometimes recreate the very tone they hated. not because they want to, but because stressed bodies repeat familiar patterns. This is why shame is such a useless tool for struggling parents. It just adds another layer of threat to an already overloaded mind. What helps is accuracy about what is actually happening in the moment. Discipline is about guiding a child toward a limit they can eventually internalize. Distress is about the parent urgently discharging what they can no longer contain. One creates safety around the boundary even when the child hates it briefly. The other makes the boundary feel fused with the parent's frayed emotional edge. You can test the difference with one simple question later tonight alone. If your child complied instantly, would you still feel the need to keep talking? Distress usually wants more than cooperation. It wants release, proof, and vindication. Discipline usually gets quieter once the limit is clear and fully enforced. It does not keep circling the wound to make the point feel deserved. Another clue is the speed inside your body before the words arrive. Discipline can be immediate, but it rarely feels impulsive from the inside. Distress feels fast because your system wants the discomfort gone right now. Your volume rises before your thinking fully catches up with your mouth. Your words get longer, sharper, and less connected to the actual behavior. Suddenly, you're not only correcting bedtime, you are correcting your entire week. That is usually distress speaking through the parenting voice you wish stayed steadier. It begins the second you notice your body turning a child into pressure. That is the moment to slow the pace, not abandon the limit. Fewer words help because overloaded brains tend to leak extra heat everywhere. A lower voice helps more than a smarter lecturer ever will hear. A clear consequence spoken once often works better than 5 emotional warnings. And if you need 10 seconds before responding, that pause is not weakness. It is often the exact space where discipline gets separated from distress. Parents worry that calm means permissive, especially when a child is pushing hard. But calm is not surrender. Calm is what keeps the boundary from becoming emotional spillover. Children need adults who can stay firm without turning firmness into emotional punishment. That does not mean smiling through everything or sounding endlessly patient either. It means your limit is not asking your child to carry your state. Consider the parent saying, "Phone away now," because you were getting rude. Compare that with, "Phone away now. We are done for tonight, no debate." Same boundary, different emotional burden placed on the child in that moment. The first line drags identity into the conflict when stress is already high. The second line keeps the limit where it belongs, inside the decision. This matters even more with teenagers, because humiliation lingers longer than correction. A teen may argue about the role, but they remember contempt for years. Scared about social media, friends, school pressure, sleep, motivation, and emotional withdrawal? Scared that one wrong move could push their child further away again. So the parent grips harder, talks longer, monitors more, and feels worse. Because fear dressed as control still feels like fear to everyone nearby. This is also why guilt becomes so intense in modern parenting today. Parents are not just tired, they are tired while being constantly observed by schools, apps, group chats, family expectations, and their own impossible standards. So when distress slips into discipline, parents do not just feel regret. They feel exposed, defective, and quietly afraid they are becoming the problem. But becoming aware of this difference is not proof you were failing. It is proof your empathy is still online, even under daily pressure. And that awareness can change the tone of a whole household slowly. Not in one perfect week, but through many ordinary corrections made differently. Maybe you notice the heat rising and choose one sentence instead of 6. Maybe you say, "I need a second," before speaking from the edge. Maybe you keep the consequence, but drop the sarcasm, lecture, and loaded tone. Maybe you return later and repair without erasing the